Friends of FanDuel, what is going on? What is happening? We are back yet again for another Monday Night Football preview show here on the FanDuel channel. I'm Ryan Williams, your host for this evening, afternoon, maybe morning for some of you, whatever you want to call it. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host here, Jim Sonis. You can find him on Twitter at Jim Sonis. Jim, we got a Monday Night Football preview show to get into. We got bets, we got lines, we got Chiefs and Giants, but I want to ask you about your week 8 Sunday slate. How did you do?
Well, thankfully, my regular lines went a lot better than our snake draft because you absolutely just took a flamethrower to me and Brandon with your lineup there with Josh Allen. You had a bunch of dudes who went off, so I'm glad everything else went better for me. I'm surprised you let me come on. Like you kind of like just like punked us there, you know? So I feel like I don't even deserve to be here right now. So I'm just happy to be here, Ryan. That's all I can say. Glad things elsewhere went a lot better because that was bad. I had DeAndre Swift, I think, in the snake draft, but I had him a lot in my regular lineups because I had a lot of AJ Brown, Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin. It still went okay. So just glad that the snake draft was not indicative of the rest of the weekend for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I just copy and pasted the snake draft into all of my builds from Sunday, that would have been lovely. I think that's a big thing for me. I mean, I think that my process, I was all in on Swift when the Jamal Williams news came out.
Yeah.
I'll do that 100 times out of 100 times. I'm fine with failing there. I think that I had a tough time. I always have a tough time with when the chalk starts to formulate even before Sunday. So I had a tough time with buying into Henderson and Godwin, being in on them when the field was there. And I felt pretty already chalky because I had talked about Josh Allen pretty much all week. If you follow me on Twitter and FanDuel, I basically just said, I don't understand the slate. I'm not going to play anybody except for Josh Allen. Basically, I did come around to some Jalen Hurts, and I actually came around to Ryan Tannehill because of the AJ Brown spot. So that actually kind of helped me out and saved my week with having an AJ Brown, Ryan Tannehill, bring back Pittman stack. But yeah, wish I would have been more bullish on Henderson and Godwin, but that's what Monday Night Football's for, right? We can make up for those mistakes.
We can erase all the Sunday mistakes, and like you said, you were on the right guys. So like knowing long term that you had the right process, I think that's always reassuring. And for me, like with the Swift thing, it's the same thing. Like if I know that I made the right play, it just didn't work out, that's fine. And I think with Swift, it's like you said, you make that play 100 times out of 100. I think that Hurts is the same thing, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't think the reason he wouldn't get garbage time would be because they had 16 rushing touchdowns the first 3 quarters. I thought it would be Hurts would, be contributing himself and stuff like that. It's like, it's whatever. I feel good about that. I feel good about the way everything else went. So I agree with you where we can feel good about those, even if they didn't all necessarily work out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it's all about every week. I mean, we got the NFL season is a grind. So every week is a learning process. There are no losses, right, Jim? There's only lessons to be learned. So we're halfway, or I guess not even halfway because of the 17 games that we'll get this year out of the season. But we're almost about that halfway point. And there'll be a lot more to learn, I'm sure. A lot of injuries are going to start to shape the slates. Trade deadlines tomorrow, so that'll shape some things. And we still have week 8 to kind of cap in the book. So if you guys are joining us here, we appreciate you guys joining in, whether you're watching on YouTube, on the Twitch channel, on Facebook. We really appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even if you're not watching on YouTube, go hit that YouTube channel up and subscribe. Give us a like video, that thumbs up button. That does a lot. That'll make Jim very happy. So make sure you guys do that. And that would be lovely. We're going to talk about the Monday Night Football preview slate. We got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the New York Giants. I believe KC being at home there. 10-point favorites is kind of how this opened up. I think the line's been moving a little bit. We're still waiting on some injury news to come from the Giants side of things with the pass catchers. But Jim, we have an interesting one where this shapes out. I mean, for us, I guess luckily so or not unluckily so, we do have the Chiefs here, which is always exciting to talk about because we always talk about the narrow distribution of targets and kind of trying to make our lives easier of when we want to pick players. The problem that we run into, Jim, is that basically all the guys that you would want to play on the single game slate are the four highest priced guys. When you're looking at Patrick Mahomes being at the top, then Daniel Jones right behind him, which I do want to play Daniel Jones in this matchup with Casey giving up a ton of points to the quarterback positions. And then you got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, of course, that people will always love to play in the same lineup. So I kind of want to start with, how are you viewing this slate, and what kind of stands are you going to take? Because I think that I have my stand on the KC side. I want to hear where your stands lie, either on KC or New York.
Yeah, so I think that what you said is correct. Where the guys you want to use are all the expensive guys. I was over on, if you go to Number Fire and you scroll to the NFL tab, you can click on DFS Sharp Stack and it'll create like lineups that correlate well. So like if you assume that Tyreek Hill is the MVP, it gives out guys who would do well if that scenario were to play out. So that's the way I tend to play things in terms of single game. And I ran some launches to see who wound up being who wound up grading out pretty well. And it was like super top heavy lineups. So like, I think that's probably the right way to go. It does mean we have to find some guys who are super low salaried and super risky, but I feel like it's, it's worth it to take shots on them because the gap in expectation between those top four guys and the rest of the pack is pretty large.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I was trying to build lineups before we came on the show, as I always do. And we've had some fun getting in on some low end guys, Jim, this year. I feel like, we're going to hit on one of these low end guys. I feel like whether it's on the same game or on the same single entry team or a same game parlay or anytime touchdown, I think we have it. And we have some interesting ones depending on how the slate shapes out. So I want to make sure I'm getting to you guys in chat who are joining in here. Shout out to Andrew Carlson, who's joining us on Facebook, asking about Darrell Williams and Devante Booker. He fears that Devante's chances will go down if the Giants get down a lot. And I understand that kind of sentiment there, Andrew. And Jim, you being the snap share guy, looking at the numbers of the touches and how people are playing, I do feel like, Devante Booker has enough share of this backfield where, you could play him. And like, we have to look back at these past couple of weeks, and I get it. The Chiefs have been at home. They've kind of had a couple of days to get things right here. And most people feel like it's a blowout, but on single game slates on these Monday Night Football games, we know things can go awry. And what happens if the Giants come out and punch them in the mouth, or it's a neutral game script for 3 quarters? I do have some interest here in Devante Booker when you look at points kind of being funneled through the backfields on opposing teams.
Yeah, I think that he does work, even if you assume they get down, because so the week 6 game is one where they played really rough. Like, it was a rough game from the Giants. Booker still played 71% of the snaps. He had 4 targets in that game, 69 yards in scrimmage. So like, he was still in there. I think that if you're using Booker, you kind of just have to hope for a touchdown because the yardage upside is really bad. In the 3 games without Saquon, he's had 58, 69, and 66 yards from scrimmage. That is not great, but he could very well get a touchdown. That first game, the Dallas game where Saquon first got hurt, he had 6 out of 12 red zone chances there. He had 1 out of 9 in the second game, and then 5 out of 11 last week. So when they get in close, they are going towards him. I think that's a good thing for Booker, but I do think there is room to potentially be lower on him. And Andrew was asking, do you go Williams or Booker? For me, I'd probably prefer Darrell because I think the red zone usage is pretty good. He did show some yardage upside in that first game that he was playing in place of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He got targets, so I'm betting on the better offense there. I'm betting on a guy who has a little bit more yardage juice. Neither guy really grades out super well there. But I do think that I prefer Darrell over Devante personally. What about you?
Yeah, I think I can get behind that as well, too. I mean, my interest from Devante just comes from how am I going to play Giants that I actually feel comfortable about if I'm not playing Daniel Jones. But you're looking at what Darrell Williams is doing in this backfield. I mean, consistently, he's not going to wow you with his target share, but just consistently involved in getting targets, 3, 4, 5 targets is what you're looking at per game. And then you have to think like, okay, so if you're not going to be able to get to Tyreek and Hill or Tyreek and Kelce, then
Right.
you definitely want some exposure to other ways in this offense of how it could go. And by playing Darrell Williams, I think maybe you hope that, Patrick Mahomes throws him one and he's able to rush one in, from the 5 or closer, and really get that equity and touchdowns where Tyreek Hill and Kelce are not necessarily getting it done.
Mhm.
So yes, I think all that being said, give me the player who's tied to the team with the higher implied point total by a large margin at the running back position.
Yeah, and I think that the tough thing with this is if you use Tyreek and Daryl together, that means you can't get to Daniel Jones. And so
Right.
I feel like you are kind of potentially choosing one or the other. And like, I'm probably going to go Tyreek Hill there a lot of the time. I don't
Yep.
know. It's tough. And I think that the salaries here are correct because they make you choose. And like, I don't want to choose, but I've got to because I agree with you. I want Daniel Jones in there quite a bit. Just tough to fit all the Chiefs I want to get in there. So I think it's a tough decision. And I'm not looking forward to trying to decide how I want to play this because it's difficult, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we usually talk about strategy too in the first couple minutes of this show as well, Jim. And I do feel like getting depending on the news again, I'll just say this: if Kadarius Toney is ruled in at his price at 10 or 8.5 of where
Yeah.
he's coming in at, this makes no sense really. If we're playing the slate out multiple times, like this guy's going to hit well beyond what he's being priced at for the single game slate. And you're looking at what he was doing in those 2 games prior to that Rams game where he got hurt, but started out, I mean, in the first, not even the first quarter, Jim, their first drive, 3
Yeah.
targets, 3 catches, 36 yards. That's where that action came from. And then the games before that, 10 catches for 189, 6 for 78. I mean, they're pricing him right by Darius Slayton, but this guy really is like Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard combined. And you're
Right. No,
getting
that's
him
that's
at
very true.
one of the cheapest pieces.
Right. He is that because he gets the deep targets, the high leverage targets of Slayton, but he gets the overall targets of Shepard. So,
Yeah.
like, 100% correct. Like, I think that I'd agree with that fully. And the good thing with Tony is if he's active, I feel pretty good about his outlook because, like, not to like be a practice highlight truther, but Jordan Ronan was like tweeting out some highlights from Tony in practice this week. He looked pretty good. Like that ankle looked pretty healthy. So if
Okay.
he's active, I'm okay being pretty aggressive and trusting it. I don't know if they'd want to risk it with him given where they're at right now. So if he's active, I am okay taking that risk and going with Tony here.
Yes, yes, and so I say all that to say it does interest me. Like if Tony was out, I was looking at, or if Tony was in, I was looking at a team that plays Mahomes, one at Kelce and or Tyreek Hill, Darrell Williams, Tony and Slayton.
Okay.
Because even with Sterling Shepard being ruled in, your hope is that Tony would kind of take away some of that target share from Shepard.
Right.
Shepard's more of the low A dot player. You got 2 explosive pieces there, and KC has been getting beat this year already in that secondary. So both of those guys would be explosive pieces. Now, that to say, I still think you do need to get a little bit contrarian or different because that would be an optimal build more
Sure.
often than not. So more people are going to have that. I think that's more of a single entry build, and maybe playing Darrell Williams at the MVP slot can help you get a little bit different there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like to try and find ways to get different. And I'm looking at the chat, and they're kind of reading my mind here. So let's start up at the top. I see Grim fan in the chat. Shout out to Grim fan who joins us on the rag. Spend money on Pringle, and we also have questions. I see. I think it was Grim fan again. He was asking about Pringle and or Robinson. I saw a couple other people asking about Robinson. I really do like Demarcus Robinson today. He's only 6K on the single game slate. And for me, I feel like more often than not that people are going to go to Mecole Hardman as kind of the third
Yeah.
option here. And he's only priced at 7,500 and play special teams. I get it. He could get there. But Demarcus Robinson, for whatever reason, just seems to be like the security blanket for Patrick Mahomes when he can't find one of his main guys. And the numbers won't say that, but I just feel like he gets targeted on the field when he's out there. If they're playing from behind or in a game script that isn't favorable for him, he's the one running the routes, not Hardman. I just feel like he's trusted more in this offense, and I feel like he could go way under owned than what he should be. So that's where my interest comes in on him.
Yeah, so last week, if you look at the routes run for the Chiefs, Demarcus Robinson was number one by a pretty decent margin. I would still like straight up prefer Pringle because I like the yardage upside more. The past couple weeks, Pringle has 2 deep targets in week 6 and then 3 in week 7, with Tyreek Hill being a little bit, banged up during those games. It did seem like Pringle was the guy they were willing to go too deep that generates yardage upside, but look at the target totals here. 6 and 4 for Robinson, 3 and 6 for Pringle. That means there are a lot of situations, probably about 50-50, where Robinson outscores Pringle, and he's a lower salary. So I prefer Pringle, but I think that you can say go with both. So Grim Fan was asking about, do we pay for Pringle or Robinson? I think you have lineups with both, like a healthy number of lineups with both, just because they're both going to run routes in this game. They're both guys who could realistically score a touchdown for this team. I prefer both them over Jerick McKinnon by a wide margin among the lower salary Chiefs guys. Yes. So I would say those two. Other one I would mention, just kind of as a consideration down here, is Noah Gray, because Jody Fortson tore his Achilles last week, which stinks because Fortson kept on scoring touchdowns. That's all he was doing. Gray ran, I think, 13 routes in that game. Got a lot of training camp buzz. He's a rookie for them. He didn't, he hasn't been a big target guy so far. I can't find him. I could probably just search his name. That'd probably be easier. $5,000. So he hasn't done a whole lot yet. 1 target or 3 total targets this year, 2 total receptions. But if you want a super low salary guy who, should run 15 to 20 or so routes, I think that Gray is a guy I'd consider there. Blake Bell was active last week and ran 1 route. So I think that it would be Gray as the super, super low salary guy, but Pringle and Robinson are both guys I think we want to build around because of the number of routes they'll run and the fact that both those guys have very obvious paths to coming through.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about Pringle, and shout out to Kyle R, who's joining us on YouTube. He was asking about any player props tonight. Looking at where Byron Pringle's coming in on the FanDuel Sportsbook, his receiving prop line is 24.5, and he's kind of crushed that the past 2 matchups. And given the Chiefs have been struggling, so we definitely want it to be a close game. I feel like for him to kind of hit that number, because we could probably see Tyreek Hill and Kelce maybe hitting well over their lines too. But if this game is competitive and the Giants are trying to take out one of those 2 pieces, 24.5 seems like a really good number to get them at it. Really, almost even line there. Almost, -110.
I mean, even DeMarcus at 15.5 is pretty interesting. Let me see what number fires projections have for those 2 guys. Okay, so Byron Pringle is projected at 19.82 yards. I'd take the over on that. But Robinson's at 15.08. I think that Pringle's role is better than that personally. So, yeah, I actually think that 24.5 is really tempting. Let's pull up the game log here for Pringle. I think he's been over 50 in consecutive weeks. Yeah, 55.73. So I think that 24.5 is really fun for him. Yeah.
Yeah, both of those lines. The Robinson one was the one I had already pretty much locked in, to be honest with you, just because just that number under 20 in the Chiefs offense, it always just feels so low. But I mean, there's definitely going to be times more often than not where he doesn't hit that, and I'm just frustrated if the passes don't go his way. But yeah, no, getting some action on the ancillary pieces of the Chiefs, I feel like is definitely a good way to get props this week, Kyle. Going back into the chat here, Andrew Carlson asking on Facebook, is this the Ingram breakout game that we finally get? Kansas City has absolutely been torched. When you put it into perspective from a statistical perspective by the tight end position, they're allowing the 3rd most FanDuel points per game to the tight end position. They're in the top 6, I believe, in total FanDuel points allowed to the tight end position. Now, Ingram has looked absolutely dust. I mean, this guy has not been able to get it together, and this has been quite some time now, Jim. Kyle Rudolph, can I interest you in Kyle Rudolph and where he's coming in at? If we do get some of these pieces ruled out, I do like Kyle Rudolph here. I'm the anytime touchdown. I'm not savant is not even a good word. That's just the first one that came to my mind. I just love those bets, right? And so I was looking at Kyle Rudolph to score. I think I was looking at Kyle Rudolph too at his price. If I can find him here, it was $5K, I believe, on the single game slate, just to be able to jam in. If I did want to jam in Hill and Kelce on a Patrick Mahomes teams, like how can I get there if pieces are ruled out? Like that is interesting to me. And we've seen it time and time again where you can fit a guy like this in. If he scores a touchdown, and gets 20 yards or whatever, 9 points, that could be an optimal way if both of Tyreek and Kelce are smashing.
I would say too, I was talking about Noah Gray. Kyle Rudolph is probably the better option at $5,000 between the two guys. They're the exact same salary. Rudolph probably is the better option, so I should probably talk myself out of Noah Gray and shift over to Rudolph because, like you said, he's out there. Right. They are not super healthy right now. Ingram is 7,000. I think that's an appropriate salary. I just have a really hard time envisioning it happening for him because the times when he has been somewhat relevant this year have been when everybody is out. So last week against Carolina, there was no Shepard, there was no Tony. Both those guys potentially playing this week. In that Saints game, that was after Tony got ejected. It was after a bunch of guys got hurt and stuff like that. So I feel like, to me, he's done something, I guess. He's $7,000. That's a pretty low salary. I don't know. Let's see what the projections have from here. I need to take my bias, my anti-Evan Ingram bias out of it. Projections actually don't hate him. They've got him 34.25 receiving yards, so maybe I should be higher on him. I just have this big mental block up there.
No, that's fair. And I would probably I'm currently 3 max, 5 max. That's where I stand. But if I were playing, 20 lineups or 10 lineups, I would definitely make sure I had exposure to Ingram, especially if we get some guys rolled out for the Giants passing core. I probably won't get there as it currently stands. But he, just knowing the tight end position, knowing how these island games have been going so far this year in 2021, this would be a spot for Ingram to blow up. So I do think that's interesting. People are asking about the Chiefs defense as well too, Jim. I want to talk about kind of just the Chiefs side in general, and we kind of really haven't touched base on it, but I think the biggest factor tonight is, are you playing Tyreek Hill and Kelce together? Are you playing one or the other? I think more often than not. And if you have to play one, who are you playing? I want to ask you this twofold too, because we have seen Hill the past couple of weeks dealing with this quad injury, and the numbers haven't been there. And I think both of us were very high on him in week 7. Did not get there in that Titans game. That was very frustrating, but he's still, still seeing a healthy target share. It's hard for me to fade him, but I do feel like Kelce is in the prime spot here today. I don't know how the Giants stop him. He has favorable numbers at home, just looking at the two of their splits. So that's where I'm going to lean, but I wanted to ask you your opinion and how you felt on that situation.
Yeah, well, I'm conflicted because on a full slate, I will always favor Tyreek Hill because the odds that he is the guy who is the must-have for the slate are very, very high. He's the guy who can drop 40. I don't think Kelce can do that right now. On a single game slate, it does improve the appeal of Kelce. The other thing that I think is interesting here with the Chiefs is that part of the reason they've struggled, it seemed like teams are just kind of saying they're going to sit back in coverage and make the Chiefs, dink and dunk effectively. They're not going to let you go deep. And that does benefit Travis Kelce. If we see the Chiefs take the more patient approach, work their way down the field, that could benefit Kelce. I still have a very hard time going Kelce over Hill. So to me, if I'm looking at the way that I kind of grade things out here, I would say Mahomes MVP more often than not. I would say Tyreek, I would go MVP. I will have lineups where I go Kelce over Tyreek, but I have a really hard time putting Kelce at MVP. I don't know if that's wrong on my part, but I have a tough time getting there. Do you think you'll have Kelce at MVP or no?
I think I will
Okay.
be for that same sentiment that you had, Jim, and that was kind of my feelings initially through this day as we're going through and doing our initial research was just like, man, I don't know if I can play Kelce there. I like Darrell Williams and
Yeah.
the leverage you can get on him at MVP. I obviously love playing Patrick Mahomes at MVP when things are not looking great for him these past couple of weeks, and so in all that sentiment, Jim, who's playing Kelce at MVP? Like not
That's
that
true.
many people.
You're
And we
right.
just had this a couple weeks back with a guy, Mark Andrews,
Right.
who had not been getting there. And Kelce hasn't had a touchdown in however long. And how many times do we see him, get these 2 touchdowns in Arrowhead? Like he loves playing there. This would be the ultimate, just like Travis Kelce goes out and just explodes and is the guy that you need to have because
Right.
everybody hates missing out on the Tyreek Hill weeks, and
Right.
that'll up his ownership. But how many of us hate missing out on Travis Kelce weeks as
Right.
well?
Well, that's exactly what I just said is the reason why we should use him. So you're right. You're
Right,
right. You're fully right. Like I was just saying, I have like this FOMO with Tyreek Hill, but that's going to lead
right.
everyone to doing the exact same thing. So you're right. Like that mindset is exactly why we should use Travis Kelce. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I love getting. I mean, Travis Kelce just to kind of share my sentiments is probably a lock for me.
Okay. Cool.
Today probably won't have a lineup without him as it currently stands unless something were to go awry. Somebody asked in the chat earlier, I think it was Dre Nitty on Facebook, if Patrick Mahomes was fadeable tonight. I I mean, you can. We had the same thing multiple times with Lamar with that question coming up. The first game, I think that was week 1, right? Looked ugly. You absolutely could have faded Lamar. The second game, for like 3 quarters, you were really hoping that you did fade Lamar
Right.
again, and then he went explosive in that fourth quarter and overtime to get his team to win. So much of this offense just relies on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this is absolutely. I mean, I can't believe we're in week 8 and already talking about must-win games for this team, but this is absolutely a must-win game for them to kind of get back into the mix here in their own division, let alone, outside of the division in the AFC playoff hunt. He just is in a prime spot. A lot of doubters against him. It's going to be hard for me to not have him. You absolutely can make lineups without him, and those would be lineups where you're expecting the Giants to really slaughter them. So I would make sure you
Right.
have exposure there, but that's probably not where I'm going to be going.
Yeah, I think that if you don't go Mahomes, you either need to assume that the Giants win in a total rout or Darrell Williams scores every touchdown. So I would
Right.
say you need to go with Darrell Williams at MVP or go with like Daniel Jones at MVP, maybe Devante Booker at MVP if you assume that the Giants roll. So I would
Right.
say ask yourself in what scenarios does Mahomes come up short? And to me, those scenarios are Giants roll or Darrell Williams scores everything. So I think that
Right.
kind of just think about the way that plays out. What are the odds that happens? 10% maybe.
Yeah.
Think about that. But kind of ask yourself in what scenarios he comes up short and ask yourself who benefits in that scenario.
Absolutely. And just to kind of put it in perspective here, I mean, look at the floor that Patrick Mahomes is offering you. I think that if you are considering that you're really, I would say to try and not lock yourself into that Tennessee game because that was the anomaly game of his career. Like he's not going out there and scoring under 10 FanDuel points, fantasy points, however you want to carve it out. 200 yards, no touchdowns. And you look at the floor before that, this guy has just been
Right.
money, absolutely money to play. So the floor that you're getting out of him just makes him want me to play him in every lineup that I would make. So that's kind of where that stands. Jim, if there's anything else, I want to make sure that we touch on everything from the slate. But really, it comes down to me from the Giants side and what injuries we get in.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm not sure if there are any other props and lines that you're seeing that you would take. What's your lean on this game, Jim? Would you be laying the points there at 10.5 where it currently stands, or you
So
got
my
Giants to
numbers say
cover?
to take the Giants plus the
Okay.
points, but I don't know how good I feel about that. Like it makes me really nervous. My numbers say to bet against Chiefs a lot, which has been like profitable because they tend to get
Yeah.
overinflated lines. But like it doesn't mean I feel good about it. So, like, if I had to pick a side, I would go Giants plus 10.5, but I'm not sure if I feel good enough about it to actually, I haven't felt good enough about it to actually bet it yet. But my numbers do say the Giants plus 10.5. I just don't know how much that's worth if I'm not actually willing to bet it myself.
Sure. And I wish I had it pulled up. I usually have my betting notes up here, but I haven't been able to find it. But I have it somewhere. They have not been good against the
No,
spread in
no.
his career, in Patrick Mahomes' career. Now they obviously have been winning games, but just when you're looking at the spread lines and how many heavy line favorites they have been,
Right.
and teams have just been able to cover that so much more often than not, that even 10.5 here for the Giants, if their pieces are ruled in, I definitely like taking a chance of getting that number. I do like the over 52 as well, which this is like the highest over under that we've had on the week. So
Yeah.
I think that we're hoping, because of how the Cowboys and Vikings game played out, hoping for some scoring here to come in bunches for our key pieces.
Yes, exactly. Always hoping for more points. And I think that we should get them tonight. There's 4-mile-per-hour winds, and that's great. I'll take 4
That's
every day.
beautiful.
So that's music to my ears right now.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Well, that's gonna do it for us here for the Monday Night Football preview show here on the FanDuel channel. Thanks for everybody hopping in and joining us, watching on the various media outlets, whatever you're watching on. We appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit that thumbs up button for us. We really appreciate it as always. Signing off for Jim Sonis at Jim Sonis is where you can find him on Twitter. I'm Ryan Williams. You can find me on at Ryan Alexander _W on Twitter. And we will join you guys next week for the Week 9 Monday Night Football preview show. Until then, enjoy, get that money. Peace.